How's it going, everybody? Marvel the Cross 316 back with another comic book flashback. Today we are looking at The Amazing Spider-Man, issue number 47. This issue came out in April of 1967, and as we look on the cover today, we have the return of Kraven the Hunter. And so we haven't seen Kraven the Hunter since issue number 34, and so we'll see exactly what he's up to in this issue and how he comes to fight Spider-Man. But before we get started, go ahead, give this video a like, and subscribe if you have not. And let's go ahead and get started. As always, this is brought to you by Stan Lee, who wrote the issue, John Romita doing the penciling, and Sam Rosen on the lettering page. And the title of today's issue is In the Hands of the Hunter. And so we begin the issue today, and we start out with a flashback to the past. We've never seen any of these scenes in any of the comics that had Kraven the Hunter in it, but we come to find out that Kraven the Hunter was hired by the Green Goblin to take down Spider-Man. And the Green Goblin here had promised that if the Kraven the Hunter could defeat Spider-Man for once and for all, he would pay the Kraven the Hunter $20,000. But as we see in this particular fight, he wasn't able to stop Spider-Man, but he comes to his senses and says, you know what, I'm going to collect half of that pay. So he comes to this guy right here. He's in green. We don't know exactly who this guy is, but we come to find out that this is Norman Osbourne that Kraven is talking to. So Kraven tracks down Norman Osbourne. Norman Osbourne had told Kraven that he will not give him the full $20,000 unless he officially defeats Spider-Man. And until he does that, he's not getting any of the money. So Kraven hunts down Norman Osbourne, unbeknownst to him, and he sees that Norman Osbourne is the guy that he's working for the Green Goblin, but of course we know that Norman Osbourne is the Green Goblin. And thanks to that fight in issue number 40, Norman Osbourne has lost all memory of being the Green Goblin, has lost his memory of Peter Parker being Spider-Man, and has lost his memory of ever having Kraven work for him. And so that's going to play a big part into this issue today, while we have Kraven the Hunter on the hunt for Norman Osbourne. So we have Kraven the Hunter here. He's just been released from jail. He served his sentence. He breaks into the Daily Bugle, and he comes to find out that the threat of the Green Goblin is gone. And the Daily Bugle has printed in their newspaper that the Green Goblin died in a fire back in issue 40. But of course, we know that Norman Osbourne is still alive, but the threat of the Green Goblin is gone. So now we have a furious Kraven the Hunter on the trail, searching and hunting for Norman Osbourne. So we have right here, remember Aunt May had just moved in with Anna Watson from last issue. They came to an agreement. We have Mary Jane come over to help, but she doesn't prove any help as she starts dancing in the living room. We have Aunt May here. She calls Peter Parker on the phone just to check on him. Peter Parker seems to be having a time of his life now as he's moved in with Harry Osborn. As we remember from last issue, he moved in with Harry Osborn in this new apartment. We have Harry Osborn's dad come over, Norman Osborn, just to check up on his son and see how things are going. He meets Peter Parker here. It seems like it's almost like the first time they've met, because Norman Osborn has amnesia. He doesn't remember much, but it seems like he doesn't remember who Peter Parker is. So it seems like that threat of Norman Osborn thinking that, or knowing that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, is over for the time being, hopefully for a very long time. And so that's one thing we have to worry about, is whether Norman Osborn will ever return his memories will ever return to him. But that's for later on. We have Kraven the Hunter here. He's on the hunt for Norman Osborn. He comes to Norman Osborn's secretary, and his secretary basically says, you know what, he's out of town, I'm sorry. So now Kraven's like, give him the message that Kraven is in town. And so now Kraven here, as we see, he's installed new gadgets for when he's going to fight Spider-Man soon. Hopefully this time he believes he'll be able to defeat Spider-Man once and for all. Remember from last issue that we also have a going away party for Flash Thompson, and Gwen Stacy's in charge of this party. she tells Peter Parker that he can invite Mary Jane to this party. And we still see that Peter Parker has some feelings for Gwen Stacy. He's never been able to go out on a date with Gwen Stacy. He doesn't know how it's like, but every time he sees her, he's just like has butterflies in his stomach. He's just like, wow, she just turns me on so much. But of course, he can't deny that Mary Jane isn't anything to look at either. I mean, she's beautiful as well. We see Spider-Man swing over to the Daily Bugle. He has photos of the Shocker from last issue, and upon returning to the Daily Bugle, we see Peter Parker invite Ned Leeds and Betty Brant here to that party. So Peter Parker here gives J. Jonah Jameson the photos, and of course he had been talking to John Jameson on the phone. And so Peter Parker collects the money. We have Kraven the Hunter here. He goes to Norman Osborn's mansion just to check and see if Norman Osborn is really out of town. Just pretty much crashes into Norman Osborn's mansion here, alerts the butler and tells the butler that he's looking for Norman Osborn and to alert him that his life is on the line. And so now Kraven the Hunter is just threatening everybody. He's on the hunt. And so it seems to be true that Norman Osborn has gone out of town. He's on this business trip. But the butler is going to alert Norman Osborn about this. So now we have Harry Osborn and Peter Parker. They're getting ready for this going away party for Flash Thompson. They arrive at the Silver Spoon, but before then, they're going to go pick up Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane, and they're both, dressed very nice for this party. And Peter Parker, especially, very attracted to Gwen Stacy here, and just a lot of bantering going on, a lot of great dialogue. There's a lot of dialogue in this issue. It is a really good build-up, I would have to say, to what's going to happen next. So everybody's at this party. Everybody seems to be having a good time. We have Flash Thompson. He makes the grand entrance here. Everybody seems to just be loving it. We have Mary Jane. She's dancing. Harry Osborn's like, are we going to let her outdo your dance? Or outdo you? She's dancing really good. And Gwen Stacy's like, wait a minute. She's supposed to be helping me pass out burgers. She's like, here's the plate. And so then Gwen Stacy just starts in. She starts dancing. Mary Jane does not like it. She does not like having competition with Gwen Stacy. And Peter Parker's like, wow, man, this is the girl I've never dated. But all of a sudden, we have Kraven the Hunter bust in, and he's looking for Harry Osborn. So this is where things get really interesting here. He's going to see if he can take Harry Osborn captive here, so that this will alert Norman Osborn. Flash Thompson tries to butt in, but Kraven the Hunter swats him like a fly. So now, with all the disturbance going on, this gives Peter Parker a chance to run out to change to Spider-Man. So here we go. Spider-Man and Kraven finally fighting it out here. And Spider-Man's like, if Kraven is looking for Norman Osborn, then Norman Osborn must have hired him way back in the day. So I wonder why Kraven is looking for Norman Osborn. So that's one thing that Spider-Man is not going to find out in this issue. Ned Leeds alerts Jameson, so Jameson and Frederick Foswell arrive on the scene here. They're going to see what's going on with Spider-Man and Kraven the Hunter. Of course, Jameson is rooting for the defeat of Spider-Man. We see the arrival of none other than Norman Osborn. He's going to go to this place where the threat of his own son is at stake. And so Norman Osborn has come back from his business trip. And so this is going to be all just very interesting here as we see the arrival of Norman Osborn. Spider-Man seems to be duking it out pretty well with Kraven the Hunter, but Kraven uses his new gizmos here, and it douses Spider-Man in this little ray here, and it causes Spider-Man to lose his energy. So Spider-Man loses all his energy, and so Kraven pounces, strikes, but all of a sudden, in the corner of Kraven the Hunter's eye, he sees the arrival of Norman Osborn, his prey, the main prey that he's been looking for this entire time. Norman checks on his son to see if everything's okay with him, but all of a sudden, Norman Osborn is tied up in this rope, and now Kraven the Hunter is seeking revenge. He's like, the Green Goblin may be dead, but I'm looking for my money. Where is it? And so now Norman Osborn just frightened to death. He's like, I don't even know who you are. I don't remember even talking to you. And so Kraven throws Norman Osborn down. He's like, this is impossible. How in the world do you not remember me? I just spoke to you those many weeks or months ago when you, I mean, I just don't understand it at all. But we see that Kraven the Hunter here, he feels like he has been victorious, nothing less. He feels like he has defeated Spider-Man. If only he would have turned around, he would have seen that Spider-Man is back on his feet. So now we have Kraven the Hunter on the loose. But all of a sudden, Norman Osborn falls off of this building, but Spider-Man comes to the rescue, saves Norman Osborn, and so now Spider-Man is worried about the threat of Kraven, but he changes back to Peter Parker, tells the crew that he was looking for a camera. He had forgot his camera. That's his big excuse. But we end the issue here with Peter Parker sending off, Flash Thompson here, bidding him a good farewell, hoping that he'll be safe as he fights in this war in the Vietnam War. And so hopefully we'll see Flash Thompson return in future issues. But now we're going to have a big threat next issue with the return of the Vulture. And so that'll be interesting to see how the Vulture plays into all this next issue as we look at issue number 48. I hope to see you there. And until next time, God bless.